All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the March 12 Public Works meeting. Roll call, please.
Chairman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderman Leahy.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
And Alderman Wade.
Here.
Move to approval of the agenda. If there's no changes, can we do by acclamation? Sounds good. We have no announcements, appointments, or proclamations. Move on to citizen comment. If anybody would like to take the podium for 3 minutes, state your name and address and how many kids you have. All right, let's see, we have no takers. We'll move on to reports of committee chairs and aldermen. I have no report. Andy?
No report.
Nancy?
No report.
Brandon?
No report.
On the city administrator report, Bola?
Thank you, Alderman Lockmiller. We have Glenda Abney. She is with the Missouri Botanical Garden, and she's here. She's the director of Earthway Center, and she's here to present information to the city about the Grow Solar St. Louis program.
Great, come on up, Glenda. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone. I just wanted to make sure and share some information. We appreciate being able to have some previous conversations with a few of your staff about this program. So I just wanted to tell you more about this in hopes that Brentwood might be able to consider participating. So again, my name is Glenda Abney. I am the Interim Vice President of Education and the Director of the Sustainability Division for Missouri Botanical Garden. We are one of 3 community partners that are providing the Grow Solar St. Louis program. This was a program that we started in 2019 as a pilot year, and so this will be our 2nd year in this program. And within this program, it is really a group buy program. So it's the idea of trying to promote residential solar. Very small commercial can also engage, but it's primarily a residential program. And so this is a way that we can help individuals who are interested in obtaining solar on their homes. But many times what we hear from people is it's just a little complicated for them and they're not really sure exactly which way to move forward with it. And so this program, we have, through our partnership with Midwest Renewable Energy Association, MREA, who have been doing these kinds of programs in the Midwest region for many, many years now. They have great success and great templates and great systems set up. We have partnered with them to be able to bring this program to the St. Louis region. And what we did last year and are expanding into this year is, again, it's a group buy program. So we did an RFP with very specific requests out to bring in a solar provider who then must comply with the program requirements that we outline. So this allows us to offer a discounted rate to residential individuals who are interested in getting solar on their home. It also allows us to have all of the program outlines set up so that if an individual wants to partake in the group buy program, they can come to what we call our solar power hours. It's a 1-hour event that we will hold at least 20-25 times between April and August. And they can come to one of these, learn way more about the program, and be able to sign up right away so the solar installer can assess if their home is viable. Right then in the solar power hour at the end of the time, they can do that with a specialized program and tell them right then if their roof structure is such and if the shading system within their home is such that would prohibit it. And they're very honest about it, so if it's not good for them, they'll tell them right then. If it is good for them, then it's up to the homeowner to decide if they want to move forward. Our solar provider also works directly with all the municipalities, understanding all of the codes, all the restrictions, all the guidelines they have to work with. So really what we're saying is, on behalf of Missouri Botanical Garden and Midwest Renewable Energy Association and our third partner, who is Washington University, we have vetted this program and the different components so a homeowner, we hope, feels safe being able to move through this program without having to do all the research themselves. So if they come to this power hour, they learn about it, they can engage in the program and move forward. What they will receive is, again, a discounted rate than versus if they just went to a different solar provider. Of course, they can always just go to any solar provider, but this one allows that discounted rate. What we're also hoping for as a result of this program is that we are collectively in the region working together on such things. So for instance, last year, we had goals that we wanted to meet, and we wanted to perhaps serve maybe 30, 35 homeowners, maybe a stretch goal of 40, maybe 50. Well, we went to 71. So the interest is very high in this. So when we tracked it and looked down to what kind of an impact is that, you know, in terms of how many cars would that be taken off the road, how many trees planted in a forest, it was just off the chart. So it's really, really been very successfully received. The installs have gone very well. People have been very happy with their program. The way this works is that while we offer it in the region, we really hope that the individual municipalities come on as promotional partners. Hence, that is what our request of you tonight is, for you to consider making a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen that Brentwood would come on as a promotional partner. There is no requirement for you other than simply helping us to promote the program. If you agree, that means that we can use your, if you allow us to use your logo, it would be on the website, on social media, and on the flyers that we use. And what we then do is we make sure that power hours are in those local municipalities, which when people come, typically they're in restaurants, breweries, community centers, different things like that. People, it's a 1 hour, but people often pick up dinner around that area, so we're hoping that it's also an economic boost to the municipalities who do participate. So we will be working within the city of St. Louis, as well as hopefully a collection of municipalities rather close to Brentwood, and this year we're also expanding out to a few municipality areas in the St. Charles. So that is really what our request is for you to consider Brentwood coming in as a promotional partner to the Grow Solar St. Louis program, which has those 3 partners, primarily coordinated by the garden. And it just means that we would be able to use your logo and that you would assist us in whatever you would have. If you have e-newsletters or different venues, if you could just help us with promoting it. So that's basically what the request is that we have for you.
Any questions for Glenda? Andy?
Glenda, does the state or Ameren offer any type of grants to help cover the cost or assisted paying off for doing this?
Yes, very good question. And Ameren does, and that's one of the requirements in our RFP that we put out for our solar provider, was that they had to make sure that they fully understood and networked and knew how to work with, so that they work with the homeowners to be able to apply for those rebates for Ameren. So again, homeowners are not on their own. They can walk through everything. Also, if there is any federal tax credits that would still be remaining, we're waiting to hear some answers back from that, what's happened. They would also help walk through everybody on that aspect as well. Of course, you want to use your own tax provider for the specifics to this, but the information that you would need in order to take to your tax provider is all provided.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, thank you,
Any
Glenda.
questions? Okay, thank you very much for your consideration.
Question?
Well, do we need to make a motion to direct staff to take the steps to engage in this program?
Yes.
Is that a motion?
Yep.
I'll second. No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Can I make a second motion
Glenda?
as well? So, I mean, I think, we've talked about eliminating some of the barriers in terms of having ARB approval necessary for solar, some of the permitting thing. I would also like to direct that we start working that in parallel to eliminate those barriers.
Thank you. That was the second step. Do you want to speak to that? We were waiting for the Botanical Garden to approach the city. Lisa, Eric, Dan, and I have already met.
Okay.
So now that we've heard from her, we're ready to get started on the
Okay,
next
great. 'Cause
step.
Second
I would think we'd want to
motion
have
to
that in
waive
place
Okay.
if it's necessary.
So we have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So those go to the board. Good.
All right, we'll move on to department reports. Eric with Parks Department, several updates and some other items. And who's behind the refrigerator?
All right, thank you. I have a few reports for you guys tonight. I'll try not to cough on you guys. All right, so the first is just the just quick department report for the month of March. A couple things on the department report. The first was that the Parks and Recreation Department submitted the Ristograph Tree Inspection Program for the MML 2020 Innovation Award. I won't spend a whole lot of time on that, but I did put the full nomination in the report. So if you have any questions about that, I'm more than happy to answer about it. But we're excited about that, and we hope that it is well received. We should hear something about that in the next couple weeks, and hopefully we'll be talking about it in September. The second thing is the Rogers Parkway Playground. I know that was discussed at the last Board of Aldermen meeting, and we want to have some further discussion about that tonight. Whether we should stay, whether the playground could stay, or at least stay until the new playground is built in Normus Park. And as I looked at that a little bit further, my recommendation is, due to safety concerns, we should probably remove that playground once that new entrance into Brentwood Place is open for a couple of reasons. And I put a couple pictures in the report. And the biggest thing is the safety concern of the sight line. And as you drive down, and specifically as a bicyclist, is my biggest concern. As you're driving down or bicycling down, you really can't see cars coming down, and vice versa. Motorists can't see bikes coming down as you're working both on those perpendiculars. And as they're both basically going downhill, you basically only have 55 feet once you get past that playground. And so if one's going 25 miles an hour, which is basically, I'm more concerned about the bike than the vehicle. You basically only have about 1.36 seconds to make a decision. Secondarily, as you're coming around that playground, you're basically, your sight line of your bicyclist is going away from that street because you're basically going around. And so I know we probably do a little bit more with the cars, put some speed humps or something else. But again, I'm a little bit more concerned about the bikes. So secondarily, the current playground is at the end of its useful life. It was actually one of the ones that we had slated for removal. But once we started with the plan, we kind of said that we try to push off as long as possible, knowing that it would be removed. We also talked about knowing that the plan was to put a new playground in Northwest Park. And so knowing that we'd be there, it'd be a little bit longer, but still within that 10-minute walk. It's about 0.32 miles, which is still within that 2017 goal. So those are the reasons why our recommendation is to remove that playground again once we put in that new access to Brentwood Place. So informational memo. Happy to take any questions about that.
Questions for Ed? Okay, Paula? Are they still working on the design for that?
Yes, they're finalizing that. Yes, in time for the deadline to submit it to MoDOT.
Tomorrow.
What's tomorrow? The 13th, yeah. So what this means is that the motion that was made at the meeting, they have explored whether there is a possibility in the design to move it further south, and there isn't. So we'll be sharing that information with you before I leave tonight. I'll share that with the board.
Go ahead, Andy.
So the proposed cut-through is 200 feet south of Florence. Would you put it just south of the playground itself currently?
It's about 55 feet south of that
Yeah.
playground.
Okay, to work with. So taking the playground out would be beneficial
Yes.
for both the cars going in and
And the
out
people.
of the thing, plus the cars going up and down Dorothy.
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, I will send that to you. I know that the board received additional email request from a resident asking that the city look at all those options, and the engineers have. So just to do their additional due diligence as they were requested to do, we have that result, and they have, and it will be where they presented it.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Well, I mean, is there a conclusion for this? Are we reaching a conclusion?
Well, this is part of what Eric is
Is
informational. As far as the design goes, I don't know.
So I don't really think
What's part
there's
of this?
any additional action that needs to be taken as a result of the design for the cut through Rogers Parkway. But in terms of the playground, we just want you to know that it's the recommendation when the construction begins. We're not touching the playground right now. It's going to stay in place. But once the construction begins, we will remove the playground. And then that leads to another discussion for the board. Well, what about Northwest Park? Because we have not completed the discussion about some of the functional areas within that park system. So if, and when we schedule the next workshop, the board can definitely take on that discussion and funding of it, and the placement of it within the park system.
What's the timing of the construction and the starting of this breaking through Rogers Parkway?
I don't have that information with me right here, so
Okay, but just
I
like
don't want to guess.
summer,
It'll probably be
March
late,
of next year.
late, Well, let me check that and I can
Okay.
respond to you. It's online. I just don't remember
Because
it off the
I'm
top of my
curious
head.
what the timing of that is based on the playground, because we'll be having discussions about the playground in the former Northwest Park soon, and we might be able to know what the result of those discussions are before this playground is removed, just timing wise. I'm just kind of curious the timing.
Sure.
But I don't think we would want to remove it yet, right, until we have that other playground online. I understand this security concern, but we can put signs on the path. I mean, GRG has stop signs for bikers all over the place where there's crossings. I mean, I think there's other ways we can keep it safe for that until the new Norm West playground is online.
So we were thinking that once construction starts is when we would remove that playground, but that's not what I hear you say.
I don't think we should do that.
If I may. In what we did at the Board of Aldermen meeting, I thought we agreed that they would take the trail from Manchester up so far, but they weren't going all the way up to the playground.
It would stop
itself.
and then
So
continue
now,
on the other side.
When
yeah.
they do their cut through, we won't have any real construction happening at the playground then. You wouldn't be re-pouring the walkway to come down the middle of that right of way.
You would stop
You
at the
would,
driveway.
you would leave what is currently there, and the city at its design would pick up doing the extension of the park where the Brentwood bound walkway would end, taking us up into the Rogers Parkway itself further. So at that time, you could look at what do you want to do with this playground that's there. If there's nothing that says we have to immediately do something, unless you tell me that the playground is so unsafe that you don't want somebody getting hurt. And when I walked around it, I didn't see a whole lot of.
No, I mean, there's not, I mean, safety of the exact
Using it.
structure, right, is okay right now. It's
Yeah.
still passing
to
inspections
work
every
with. So
month.
there's no
There's
hurry
still
in ripping
the-
it out.
There's still the secondary issue of kids being in there between two major intersections, but you can still put a fence up. And I think that'd be okay for a temporary
According to the
solution.
timeline on the website, demolition work should have started, and it did, December of last year through August of this year. Applicable buildings and begin preparing the site for construction. And then flood mitigation construction starts June of this year through June of 2022. And MoDOT, their construction starts October of 2020, this year, through 12/20/22. So yeah, no decision has to be made. There's no urgency. We just felt that there was a follow-up that was requested to take this on at this committee, which is why Eric presented what he presented to you this evening.
But before it would be removed, we would know about it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, as long as,
Just not
as long as
disappear.
that's true, right?
All right, let's move on to item B, and this has to do with removal of leaves, gumballs, pine cones, and other stuff from residential property.
So, obviously springtime is obviously a fun time for gumballs in the city of Brentwood. And so there is we will get a number of requests throughout the years since I've taken over the urban forest about gumballs and what do we do about gumballs and can we cut down some sweet gums and things like that. And so our line has always been since we excuse me, since we approved the tree policies and guidelines manual, is that we don't cut down live trees. And so, in there we have a line of what a hazardous tree is, and gumballs does not fall within that hazard. And so, we do have people who will say that gumballs do create a hazard, and that is creates maybe a health and safety concern. And so that is, right, as of now, not a reason that the city has determined that would be a hazard to remove a tree. Currently, the city does have 355 sweet gum trees in the public right-of-way. And if we publicly state that we're removing one or any number, 1, 2, 3, 5 gumball trees because of someone saying that's a health or safety concern, then we would have to remove all 355 sweet gum trees. and that's obviously 15% of our urban forest, and that would decimate what we currently have in our urban forest. So personally, I don't think that would be economically or ecologically viable to do it for gumballs. So that's kind of the stance that we've taken. Obviously, we've tried to figure out different ways to help. We have not planted a sweet gum. I take a lot of abuse for it, but it's not something we've done. It's been done many years ago. We will never plant another sweet gum.
Well, never say never.
But they are beautiful trees. They provide a lot of good benefits. They are planted because they absorb carbon during the time when there's a lot of smog. So there's a reason why they're planted. But it is one of the things that I understand. I used to play in a sand volleyball league where there's gum balls right next to the court, so that was a lot of fun. I guess the question is, that was the question, and so what do we do? And I don't have a great answer, I'll be honest. We sweep up with the sweet sweeper. We do our best. Our code says that by code, owners are responsible for their sidewalks, much like for snow removal. So, that's what we've kind of held our hats to, is that it's really the owners who are responsible for removals of it for the sidewalks. So.
Andy?
Okay. Following up on what Eric is bringing forward, and I'm not opposed to what we have in the tree arrangements to work with. I did send an email as a follow-up question yesterday as to, are we, since we have been requested to look at it as a safety concern, and it's a repeat request over the last 4 years, does that make us negligent if someone gets hurt by twisting out an anchor or something like that, or no, that's walk at your own risk?
I don't have a response
Done.
from the city attorney.
Okay, so on that one, we'll just play that one by ear and see where that takes us.
Right.
The other reason I asked for this to come online, I got a few phone calls and went through the code. We have a code, we have code enforcement in it that says you can't let your grass grow past 9 inches and stuff. But we have nothing in the code that says, do you want to rake up leaves and pick up the debris and stuff? I have a few residents that complain that other residents will rake their yard because of the vacuuming system that we do. But they don't sign up to the vacuuming, and the leaf pile just sits there in the city right away. They don't put it in the street. But the winds blow it all over the place, so it ends up in the next guy's yard. And the residents are a little annoyed at that. So the request was, is it something we should look at as to requiring that if you're going to be doing this, that you rake it and put it in the yard waste arrangement so that it does get picked up as a good neighbor. The gardening clubs will tell you that around shrubs, plants, gardens, you want to leave the leaf litter for bugs to overwinter in and stuff, especially the ground caterpillars type thing. So pulling and raking it all out and pelling them to do so may not be the best solution. And I think we had a couple residents, Dan, I think your group got to deal with it, that put their leaves in plastic bags. Nobody would pick them up because they're in plastic bags. So they finally brought the yard waste trash can out and put the bag and all in the trash can to have the city pick them up again that way. Do we need to do something in the code to clarify and give it some of the potential enforcement just so that we can help people be good neighbors? That's why I'm putting it on the agenda for the discussion value.
Do you know if these neighbors have talked to the neighbors before they want us to be the heavy hammer?
I have talked with a couple of the offending neighbors, and that's how I found out that, yes, they were thinking of signing up for the vacuuming, but decided not to at the last minute because they found out it was expensive. That was their terms. $35 isn't really that expensive.
Well, I know also Alderwoman O'Neill has brought this to our attention over in the Brentwood Forest area, and they have grounds crews that clean up over there. But but it seems to be a constant problem. I guess my question is, in the way of sterilizing those trees, is that an expensive?
According to the urban forester, there is a product, but the success rate is variable, and it is expensive. So we could look into it, but again, you have to hit it right at the right time, and again, to hit all 355 trees would be a large expenditure to the city's
But I
budget.
mean, if Brentwood Forest is already having the expense of constantly cleaning these up, and if they wanted to look at, and this is just a suggestion, sterilization of the trees within their community over there, as opposed to the cost of cleaning up all the time, I mean, would that be something that we'd be open to as far as letting them bear the cost of sterilizing those trees that are there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd be open to a partnership with something like that. We've talked about different partnerships in other ways, sure.
Andy?
Your sterilization is a yearly process, and depending on where your trees are located, some could be very close to residential living things, and you really don't want to be around when they're spraying that. It does linger, and if you're shooting up 35, 40 feet into the trees and the winds blow, it's all over the place. It's not been the best effective, and yes, Eric's right, you have to catch it just as the buds are coming out on the trees before they fully blossom, because that's what produces your gumbo itself.
Well, since you brought this to our attention, do you have a motion or anything you want to?
My promise to the residents is that I would bring it here for discussion. I don't know, and I'm not 100% sold on, yes, I want you to rake up everything in your yard and get rid of it, because I don't. I rake up mine and shred it and put it back down on all my garden beds. But I can understand the guy that's complaining that he cleaned his yard, but the neighbor didn't, and a month later, all of his leaves ended up in the neighbor's yard. And that's not good neighborliness. But at the same token, I'm not sure how you get an enforcement to it either, because you'd have to verify, those leaves were over there and now they're over here.
I understand.
It's all perception.
It's just an education process, you
Yep.
know, every fall, we put it in the newsletter, we put it on the website, don't rake into the street, bag your leaves. But you know, there's nothing that tells you that you have to rake your leaves, so you can just leave it there. I don't know, and maybe Lisa can speak to it. I don't necessarily see it as an enforcement issue or a code violation. I know that Dan, when they're snow plowing, I mean, you all see that there, but you know, we use the street sweeper to sweep it. But unless you sweep it off your sidewalk into the street,
And
we can't help you
Well,
really.
if somebody does call in and complaining that, you know, the leaves are piled up on the sidewalks, we can enforce that with the property owner.
Yeah, we can.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's no code ordinance that I could find that said, you, the homeowner, must rake your leaves.
No, it
Type
doesn't
thing.
exist.
There is a thing that says you can't put them in the street.
Right.
That was it. And I didn't see a lot of that, so we're getting better at that.
Yeah.
So MSD must be happy with us.
Right, right.
So it's a matter of education.
To work with it.
All right.
Thank you for letting me bring it forward.
Sure. Eric, we have advertising in the ice rink.
Yeah, so one of the things last year when we talked about putting together a sponsorship and naming right package, was one of the things we thought about was ice rink advertising, dashboard advertising. And so obviously it's one of the things that it's done at a lot of rinks. You can't go to an NHL game or any place without seeing them. And so in looking around different places around St. Louis, I listed the places that do it. If you think about municipal rinks, it's probably half and half. So Kirkwood and St. Peter's do it, Creve Coeur and Webster do not. So if you want the municipal aspect, it is half and half. And so we got brought up again. We're about ready to go down for maintenance. It's a good time to do it. And we've been approached by 3 different businesses at least. Surf Pro is one. They're in Shrewsbury. They do a lot of work. They're on the chamber board, the Brentwood Chamber, and do a lot of work with us already with sponsorship, and we're really interested in doing that with us and a couple other as well. In addition, we also see it as a way, as we go into Brentwood Bound and actually doing other naming right things, as a way, as an incentive of saying, hey, if you help us with naming rights, we can also give you this dashboard. The ice rink is kind of a little caveat, this little nugget as well. And so we were doing some research. As we did the research and kind of saw what it was, it's usually somewhere between 500 to, if you think about Maryville, 3,000. It's a little bit overboard. Behind the goals to 1,000, 500, 1,000 to the side. The side, you have the better viewing. You could also do the Zamboni. Of course, that's a lot of people like doing the Zamboni. So our recommendation, if we want to do it, is 500 for behind the goals, $750 for the side, and $1,250 for the Zamboni. The advertisements are created and installed by a local company, so it's a turnkey. We give them the graphics, they do it, they come out, put it up. It's a year. They actually have a thing where if it doesn't look very good, they can come back out and redo it because they certify their stuff for a year. So all in all, we have 38 panels. So our recommendation is to move forward with this.
A couple of questions. When you talk about the side panels there, I assume you're talking the western side of the ice rink, because the eastern side is basically not viewed except for the hockey players.
There's like one or two before you hit the benches, but yeah.
And we repaint the boards each year when we do maintenance, or every other year?
We get them cleaned.
Okay.
There's actually a company that comes out and actually scrubs them down, but yeah.
Would the company that's doing the installation be billing the city for putting up the ad, or the company that purchased the ad?
We suggested that we would actually pay that, or we would pay that ourselves, so it wouldn't be. So basically, if we're charging 500, we'd be making $375 per year
To
off
work
of that.
with.
Yep.
So their fee covers the installation,
Yes.
but we're not seeing the full profit. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, entertain a motion to let Eric sell billboards or whatever these things are called.
So moved. Going to the full board.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, Eric, I think you have one more thing on the lease for the snow cone concession stand down at Memorial Park.
Yeah, so we have a new, as you know, Southern Snow sold the concession stand to Carrie Trostel, who's a Brentwood resident, and KKT Partners is her KKT Partners lease, LLC. And so she is very excited to be moving forward with this snow cone. She is interested in entering a 3-year lease agreement with 2 one-year extensions. We're recommending staying with the same monthly rent, which is $150, which is what it was before. Everything's very similar. The only difference with the lease with prior to is in the previous lease, under the actual hours, which was in number 16, we'd actually listed the hours as 7 a.m. to dusk. Carrie would like to actually think about, she hadn't actually figured out exactly what she wants to do, and she's actually interested in staying open a little bit later. Even though our hours are to dusk in the park, we discussed, I'm not too worried about having people in the parking lot a little bit later, if that helps her out. She's also interested in maybe doing some special events from time to time, and I said that we'd have to discuss as those come up, and she'd formalize those plans a little bit further. I think the question for the committee is whether or not that would be a board decision, or would that be are you comfortable with that being a city operational decision? And that's the question I actually had for you guys tonight. Hours and those type of decisions, would those be operational, or do we need to bring those back to you? So the hours, she wants to be able to get in early enough to get to the YMCA camp, which I think is great, and stay open late enough. I feel very comfortable working with her on those hours. But then the special events, you want me to bring those back when they come time to time, or are you comfortable with me working with her?
Well, let's discuss it. Anybody have any questions? Nancy?
Well, I've talked to Carrie about this, and I'm actually really excited that the snow cone stand is going to be open again, even as my children are ages 15 to 20, and they love the snow cone stand as old as they are. So this is great news, and I have talked to her about some of her plans, and it sounds very community oriented, it sounds like maybe she was talking about possibly doing a movie night. She doesn't want to go late, so it would disturb the neighbors, but maybe it would be after dark, depending upon the time of the year in the summer. And then maybe staying, like you said, staying open a few times before the YMCA camp so that people could stop in. I think it sounds great, and I'm glad you're open to it, and I would be comfortable with staff coordinating the times.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of us forwarding on to the board, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thanks, Eric. All right, I guess Dan, you're up. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, Public Works, I jumped down.
We brought that in here for you, Dan, and others.
Good for you, sir.
He's wiping down
Bringing in
the Target
hazmat.
World.
Don't tell them that.
I'll just set it on fire.
No,
There we go. Good as new. Okay, there's a total of 3 items on here. The first one's fairly straightforward and easy. It's just the sewer lateral repair program. Just to give you an update of how 2019 wound up. If you recall, there were actually 2 resolutions that occurred during 2019. So you had 1084.2, 1084.3. So if you look at those holistically, you know, we eliminated cabling and cleaning. Originally, we used to pay for that. We used to also, if somebody had a home sale contingency, we wouldn't reject it. Now we do. If there's a defect that causes backups, yes, we'll pay. It's qualified. But if it's just that there's structural cracking or something that's not justified, to just replace it. And then we reduced the cost ceiling from $7,250 to $3,500. So after you look at all those changes, got 11 years worth of data now, so revenues versus expenditures. Based on what Karen's got posted, we took in a total assessments in total of $148,442.40. And we wound up spending $147,717.06. So roughly $725 to the good. And then she still made if we hadn't done the cabling and cleaning, we would have had thousands more because we spent a little over $7,000 between January and February, and then we stopped doing it in March. We did the $90,000 transfer in. That was to get the fund balance, you know, a positive number. Otherwise, it would have been negative, or darn close to negative, or not negative. It would have been like close to zero because there wasn't much money left in there. You know, the 725 would have helped. It would have kept it positive, but just barely. And then, of course, we have 2 claims so far in 2020 that are pending. And then we have, I believe it was like 3 or 4 that we actually did do January and February. So we got $7,000 worth, I know, between January and February. So far it's working out fairly well because we can still do, with the money we have, anywhere from 35, 36 repairs. And that would still get you positive in the sense that we would pay ourselves back. Because one of the things that's actually new to 2020 is this sub-account 6555, that's debt service to the general fund. So based on our estimation, we thought we could probably pay ourselves back $20,000 year over year. And if we have more savings, well, then we would pay more of that debt off. Because if you recall, we had racked up over $300,000 in transfers from general over to sewer lateral to keep it going. So just wanted to give you a kind of a bird's eye view of where it is now. You know, so far so good. If it starts dipping too far negative, then we'll come back to you, and then maybe we have to reduce the benefits again. But so far, I think we've reached that equilibrium where we're okay.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, knock on wood.
I don't think we're going to revisit this anymore.
Number 2.
Thanks for the update, Dan.
Yep, so that was fairly easy. Then the next one is request to partner with Brentwood Forest Condominium Association on streetlights. Bull and I met with Brentwood Forest. We talked about possibly doing some additional streetlights. If you recall, there was a total of 34 lights that were budgeted, and this goes back years. You know, I think I started looking at this in like 2017, Then we had a list in 2018. 2019, we did an RFP. We put 20 lights in, or we're still in various stages. Not all of them are up and running. So of those 20, we're still getting those 20. There were 6 that were tabled. Of those 6 that were tabled, 3 of those received solar lights. So Barnstable, Bedford, and Laverne Court are the solar lights. There's 3 that are still tabled, and then there's 5 in York Village. So we have $50,000 in the 2020 budget for street lights, but of that $50,000, we had to absorb the change order over on Parkside to put that light in, because it was in 19, but then it actually didn't get installed till 20. So when I get the invoice, it has to be coded as a 20 expenditure. That's just the way it is. So we do have some funds left. I still need to negotiate something on those 5. I finally found a solar that I think is to their liking. It's colonial in appearance. It's black. It doesn't have a cantilevered solar panel. It's actually like ribs on the post. So I'm waiting on a quote to see how much those are. The solars that we put in with a different company, those 3 that we put in, those are a little over $3,000 with shipping and everything, and we had to put a foundation in. I feel that we could still do these ourselves, because I looked and the length and dimensions are fairly similar, and the weight should be about the same too. But I'm just anxious to see what the cost is.
So this year for lighting, we just had $50,000 budgeted.
Right.
We spent 2,400 of it, so now we're down to 47,600.
Correct.
And per the adopted budget that was to be spent over in York,
5 of them.
yeah, depending on what they finally come in at, will determine if there's any funds possibly left over in this budget year.
Right.
Nancy?
So I have a question. You mentioned, like, I know these are the 20, and then you just said something a minute ago about there were originally 34 on a list. What?
34 in total.
In total. So
Right.
we've
So
done 20 this year.
Between 18, 19, 20, those years, yeah, we've done 20.
So then,
Not all 20 are done though, because if you go to high school, the ones that are on
Oh,
this
there's
list,
just- yeah, I
it's
know.
just the post and not the luminaire, and they've got wiring pulled up. Stratford, I know, finally got done, so that one, I just need to
Yeah,
test
and
the
one
light
on
level.
Parkside didn't work either, but yeah.
Right.
I keep hearing that. So that's 20. There are 3 that are tabled. I think they're all in
Yeah.
Ward 2.
we go.
And then what are the other?
There were 3 that were fully rejected by Ameren, so Agnes, Rose, and Evans. Those that would be on the east side of Brentwood Boulevard heading north, closer to the commercial district. Those can't be done because they can't pull power from the poles that are there, because they're so inundated with other utilities. And there's switches on there too, because as you go east, like into the promenade, it goes from overhead to underground. So they don't want any more stuff hanging on the pole. And there's no more real estate to shove any more in. And Rose already has lights. It has the verdigris decorative ones. So I don't know why you would push so hard to get those there. But
So are there 3 more that I'm counting? That I know?
there's 3 that are tabled. So Douglas Court, Mary Kay Court, and like 2533 Salem. Those 3 are
Salem.
tabled indefinitely.
20. Oh, okay.
And it's like 20, 3, 3, 3, 5. Get you the 34.
These are 34. Okay. Yep.
Andy?
The 5 that are looking to go this year
Mhm.
in Yorkwood, what are we doing about property acquisition for? Because we have no right of way.
Right.
In anywhere in.
Right, they have to
Yorkwood.
donate the property so that we can put that in, whether it's solar or underground feeds going to AC power.
We raised the issue when we first started going down this road. Because Yorkwood is its own private trustee arrangement, we discussed whether or not putting in lighting would be something that would improve private property versus a public, let's make it a safety issue and provide the lighting. And I think at the Board of Alderman meeting, Mr. O'Keefe said, if we keep it towards the safety side of improving the community, the lights could go in. The trick was, is we were budgeting based on property being donated and not having to do acquisition. I have never heard if that has been accomplished. Will the property be donated to us?
It's in the process, we don't know yet.
We're still working that out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that, the 5 may still have some fluctuation to it.
I mean, I think, Dan, you've determined that how many of those lights are in a, what is it? public right-of-way or easement that's owned by the
There were
trustees?
two that looked like they were in like common area of the
That
farm.
would be marvelous,
Yeah.
because they.
But again, we don't own the street, to your point, so
Yeah.
it's like somebody's gonna have to give us
Well, we
permissive
don't
rights.
even have any right-of-ways on the yards that
Right.
we could put something in. That all has to be, hopefully, donated to
Right.
the city.
Well, let's get back to the request. The request is Brentwood Forest
Right.
is looking for more streetlights. And until we know where we're at on that now less than $50,000 and what York decides to finally do,
That dictates.
we don't know if there's any resources in this year for additional streetlighting.
Correct.
So we're kind of in a holding pattern until we find out what the final cost is of going and doing York.
In the
Before
meantime, though, we
make
can
a further
investigate
commitment.
theirs, you know, they're gonna give us the addresses so that we can prioritize them, like we did with these 20. You know, we had more than 20, we had more than 34 even, and then we whittled it down based on priority.
It is my understanding that there are areas in Brentwood Forest that are not in our public right-of-way still. So the location of where you might want to put those lights also has to be defined, if it's in the public right-of-way or not.
Right, I think, Dan, you can address that. We identified some in the coves,
Right,
and the coves would not be an area that the city would necessarily consider.
Thank you, at least that we're paying attention to it. I'm not opposed to putting lights up to make it better.
Right.
I just don't want anybody saying we didn't do it without addressing all the issues.
Right.
And there is some discussion with Brentwood Forest that they may foot the bill for those.
Yes, yeah, and we can help assist them at, here's the style you'd like to get because it works best. I think that would
We'll
be
install
marvelous.
it, at their reimbursement.
Yeah,
Right, so there was a discussion that the city would purchase it for them, they'd reimburse the city, and our public works staff would install it. So we want to make sure that the board is in agreement with that before we go down that line, when we get to it.
do we get reimbursed for our staff's effort, or is that a community project?
It's a community project.
I can't hear you.
It's a community project.
Okay.
All right, well, I think that was just an update, Dan.
right, yeah, we'll get the list together based on their desired locations, go out field measurements, and then eventually look at the land issues. Basically, like, repeat all the steps we did with these other ones.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Could I
go
just
ahead.
ask a long-term question that, it sounds like this is a great proactive thing to do in Ward 4, but it's not, you've been doing this much longer than I've been on the board, but are there other spots that you had originally identified that are dark, and should there be a list of, I don't know, 100 spots, and then they are prioritized? and
Right, I
just
think
we
the
find every
plan was that he
time?
would go back out and
Right.
do another assessment and come up with another list.
Yeah, because there are, I mean, it seems like rather than just who asks, like, it seems when I came on, you were very logical about, you
Yes.
measured and done
Right,
that, so.
and some areas have improved because as old technologies burn out, Ameren puts in LEDs, they don't go backwards and put in high intensity, whichever, you know. There's no, like, if you look at their nomenclature, you'll see like HPS for high pressure sodium, or I know they have like mercury vapor, it'll be MV, but that's old technology. Anything that's old technology burns out gets an LED. So if you go down Brentwood and if you're bored and actually look up, you'll see some are old, so they're like a yellowy, and then others are bright LEDs, and then there's like 3 variations of LEDs. You can go as high as I think like 400 watt, which would be like, you know, playing ball at night, down to I think ours are like 100 watt, you know, maybe just a little bit less.
It just would be nice to have like an ongoing list
Yeah.
of dark spots.
Right,
And,
that's the
Yeah.
plan.
Good.
So
Yeah.
for
Good.
the 2021 budget, we'll have another list.
Yeah.
Yeah,
of what
because
will be
ultimately,
funded.
once we do the GPS, what I'd like to do is put that on the GPS, and then you would see a map that would show all of your street lights. So you'd have one nice piece of paper or, you know, electronic device. You'd look at your iPad or whatever and see where the lights are. Then you could make a little more logical determination, be able to measure in real terms.
We're talking about the installation of all of these. The solar ones basically fund themselves.
Right, there's no utility bill. The batteries usually last 10
A few
years.
of ours are connected to the Ameren power lines.
Of the 20, all 20 will be AC powered. And all the ones we have, with the exception of the solar, are all hooked to Ameren's grid.
So who pays it? The city pays
The city does.
that lighting bill.
Yeah, and that's why I was trying to stray away from Ameren, nothing against them, but, you know, with these decorative ones that we put in, it's $20-something a month per light for perpetuity's sake until they raise rates and then all of them go up.
Yep.
So as I keep adding more, and then the the rates
Yes.
go up, I have a bigger impact.
Yep,
Versus the solar, as long as we have the sun, I'm okay.
it would work them through. Okay, thank you.
All right, Dan, you're gonna update us on the waste collection in Ward 4?
Yes, that one came about, we'd actually gotten information from St. Louis County, it's in your memo. So the long and short of it is, currently, we pick up trash in Brentwood Forest. So trash is on Mondays and Thursdays, their recycling is also on Mondays. The recycling, they put in either the maroon totes or the little green carts that we purchased. So recycling, the city provides the containers. For regular trash, they put it in plastic bags. Well, I don't know where the complaint came from, somewhere that Richmond Heights was seeing trash blow over on their side, which is possible since Eager Road's a dividing line, and if, a squirrel or something tears open a bag, it is possible for trash to move from one side to the other. But that's where the original complaint came that went to the county. The county did an evaluation. The county said, yes, we see plastic bags and it's in violation of our ordinance. So I put in your board docs, there's a copy of their chapter 607, which is their waste management code. And then also, kind of a summary there of saying that it's supposed to be in trash for 4-family residents, which that's, I believe, all of them there, or pretty much all of them, needs to be in leak-proof, spill-proof containers, something besides a bag. So that's where it stands right now, and they're looking for some sort of action plan. Either Brentwood Forest would have to agree to put it in dumpsters or carts or some other means of transporting it to the curb that's not a plastic bag. They're fine with the recycling. They didn't say anything about it being inappropriate or not meeting the code, but it's the trash that they're concerned about. So I know Brentwood Forest has had meetings. I know that they didn't really prefer the dumpsters. They wanted carts. I don't want to put words in their mouth since they're here, so. Yeah, I was gonna say it might be easier for them to discuss like what their plan is. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, sure.
I'll just hang back.
Thank you for your time. I'm Mary Ann Moore. I'm the president of the Condo Association. This is not an easy solution, an easy problem to solve. We have had 30 years of doing our trash this way. So, but we do want you to know we're making a good faith effort to solve this problem. First of all, I drove the grounds with Kent, our general manager, just looking at what could be possible solutions depending on the size of the building, depending on the slope of the grounds, depending on obviously the look. Where would you put a dumpster? Where would you put trash cans? If we do a dumpster, you know how it is, people don't want it next to their building, right? Mm-hmm. So there are limited places where we could put them so that it wouldn't be kind of an eyesore. We're also exploring the possibility of cement pads with fencing around them, which ends up being very expensive. We have the human impact too of we have a lot of elderly citizens who carrying a trash can versus a bag is kind of complicated. We also have policies about what you can and cannot do with your trash, where you can and cannot put it, so we also have to rewrite a bunch of policies to be able to implement this. And then we would love your help educating our residents. They are not going to be happy for the most part. It's going to be, and the other thing, quite honestly, is we know we're like a little privileged because we get 2 pickups versus 1. Then the rest of the city gets 1. And can we sustain 2? If you've been in a Brentwood Forest condo, you know it's not big. We don't have garages. We don't have large places or large sheds to put a trash receptacle. And for some people, we have a policy that you can't keep them on your deck. So that policy may be changed, but then there are decks in the back of the house or the condo, so you drag your trash through your house to get. So we have a lot of issues to try to solve. And it may be that our solutions are a mix of solutions depending on where you live and what building and whether you're upstairs or you're downstairs, that kind of thing. Kent, our general manager, is spent a lot of time on the phone with Jim Schnabel, getting some advice on what kinds of cans and options are available with Brentwood equipment. You may or may not know that some of the Brentwood trucks can't get into the coves, so the men have to jump off the trucks to pick up the bags to go back to the truck because the coves are very small. So that's a logistics issue. We're also gathering information on the price of cans. You know, does there have to be a standard look, a standard size? Y'all, come on down and help us figure this out. I'm saying, you know.
You're gonna know more about trash?
Welcome to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. Yeah, so.
Aren't you glad you're president?
We're having meetings on a discussion about how to do this, and the reality of how easy or difficult it will be for some residents. You know, if you're elderly and living on the second floor and you're used to just dropping a bag, now you have to carry a can. So there's not only the logistic impact, there's a human impact, and how do we do both? So we wanted you to know that we're doing our best to come up with a solution, and relatively quickly. I'd love to, Kent and I talked about this today, I'd love to be able to say we can present at the April board, at the March board meeting, we got a great solution and implement May 1st. Don't hold your breath. But the truth is, we're working on it, and it could mean also that we can't use Brentwood waste management pickup. I mean, we don't know that either, which increases the cost. And does that mean a special assessment? So this is no small issue for us, but we're tackling it. So help us with gumballs then, because we're being good neighbors, and give us some lights. You know, we've been asking for those.
We're working on it.
I'll be back.
All right. Andy?
Thank you.
Dan, are we under any time element with St. Louis County to conform to their notice?
Well, they want us to come up with as a group, to come up with some sort of action plan. They're actually looking, they said it would be more with Brentwood Forest than it is with us. We're just the provider. But
Facilitating.
yeah, you wouldn't actually have to have dumpsters out there in 30 days, but you would have outlined your plan moving forward.
So they're willing to work with it. They're
Right.
not threatening to start a fine or anything.
Yeah, they just
Not
didn't
this
want it to be ignored, because they said, well, we'd rather the municipality handle it in-house before we step in and actually do something. So as long as we're doing something, you know, getting prices and looking at it, because with carts, I know they're kind of all over the place. The smallest I could find is like a 65 liter, which is 17.2 gallon for English folks. So it's just a little bit bigger than a kitchen can. So if you're singling by yourself, maybe that's fine.
Except you're
But-
still gonna get it somewhere.
Right, it's like, empty weight's 20 pounds. So, you know, I can lift 20 pounds up to the second floor, but not everyone can. And once you fill it, there's no telling how much it's gonna weigh. It could be 30, 40, and it does become a logistics nightmare trying to get down the flights of stairs with that. Because they thought, well, maybe they'd all leave them on the first floor, but then where do you go with them on the first floor? They can't be in the front, they have to be kind of hidden, you know, to meet with our codes, and I'm sure they've got even more restrictive codes about what you can see and not see.
But as long as these type of discussions are happening and what they're doing on their end,
Yeah.
it keeps county at bay for a while.
Yeah, all we really need to do is write a written response that, you know, this is what we're studying and this is what we're doing before we actually, because the money-wise, I don't know where it's gonna come from.
I have a question for you all. My understanding was that the city of Brentwood got some kind of a grant for some of your trash receptacles. I think you're recycling.
It's just recycling, yeah, you can't get them for trash.
Okay.
But, yeah, we received one from St. Louis County, we received them from Solid Waste District, you know, St. Louis Jefferson Solid Waste District,
For recycling purposes only.
for recycling. But it does save the city funds when you get those grants, and I got another one for $5,000 in 2020.
How do we get one?
I don't know, I don't know if you can apply for them, I don't know.
I mean,
There is a cycle that's open right now
we
with
can
St. Louis
find
County.
out.
Trash,
I think they're mainly municipal entities, right, that can apply for it,
You need to, yeah, you could be a municipality or a hauler,
or a hauler.
yeah,
Well, we're both.
right.
That's true, that's,
And I think
yeah.
that's why we get them year
Yeah.
over year. You know, they vary all over the place. We've had as high as 12,300, which was last year. And this one's only 5,000, but it's available funds. There's other people trying to get them.
Whatever expertise you can lend to them.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I knew that for the 65-gallon carts, I looked it up, and it's roughly $35 with freight and everything per unit. So if they went with 65-gallon times, you know, if they're $35 a piece, yeah, I mean, it's real money. If you're talking over 1,000 units, you're tens of thousands of dollars. So,
All right, Thank you, Dan.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we'll move on. We have nothing under the consent agenda. We'll move down to old business. And Lisa, we're back to stormwater.
So at last month's meeting, I think we gave a pretty detailed presentation, and Christy helped us out with that with Warner and Schifrin. When I left, I felt, and then after the following morning, then we sent out the ordinance to all the alderpersons and got some feedback. But I think really what it comes down to is, I think the ordinance, again, we haven't fully gotten response back from Kevin O'Keefe, but he's looking at the ordinance. But I think the ordinance, the fundamentals are all there. I think probably the main looming question is, how do we apply this? And I think the process is going to be pretty sound, and we're working on the components in order to be able to implement it. But we really do need to finalize this ordinance. And so, where the ordinance is written right now, it says that this infill or stormwater infill development permit would be required for any improvements that are greater than 200 square feet of impervious surface. So I know I've talked to you individually some since the last meeting, but I think that's what we're here for, is to get the direction to write up and finalize this ordinance. So
The feeling I got last meeting was that's the roadblock. Nancy?
Could I make a motion to implement this for projects that would trigger an ARB review? And not necessarily that ARB, this is sort of, that's my motion, that it would, if a project was triggered going to ARB, then it would be required to do the stormwater impervious, or it would be
Would need
required
that
to be
permit.
reviewed for stormwater.
yeah, and would need to obtain that permit,
Yes.
the stormwater infill development permit.
You have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I mean, does that make sense? Is that the appropriate threshold? I mean, I agree with the intent of it. Is that the right
Yeah,
trigger?
yeah, I don't know if that's the right trigger. My thought process when I talked to, and I've talked to Lisa about this, and I've talked to a couple of you, but when you have to go to ARB, you have an architect, you have contour lines on your land, it's likely a more significant project than a 200-foot patio. I know there's the same, we're not necessarily solving all the runoff issues, because a patio is going to create same runoff, 200 feet, it's 200 feet. But it seems so burdensome to have to do all this to put in a patio. And if you're already hiring a lot of stuff to do an addition or an infill home that would go through ARB, then it's still burdensome, but it's helpful to the residents who are currently living here, who are being so negatively impacted by runoff from infill houses and large additions. So I feel like I'm hoping this is a nice compromise to start with.
Andy?
I guess, and that's where I thought you were headed with this. Lisa, educate me one more time if you can. If I'm putting in a patio, what's the maximum size I can put in before I need a permit?
So for like concrete work and so forth, we don't issue a permit.
There is none required.
Correct.
So, Nancy, your proposal is, if I'm doing remodeling in my property, and in my remodeling, I need the ARB arrangement, and I'm going to put a patio or something in the backyard that goes, that's the first time somebody's gonna say there's a problem. Let's take a look at all the water issues. But anybody else that's just going, I'm gonna take and fix up my driveway, I'm gonna extend a walkway or something, they don't get hit with any of this, and we haven't really addressed any water flows on any of the smallers. Because those don't generate permit, they don't generate ARB, so I'm basically leaving it the way it is.
Right, it's not a perfect
Okay,
solution,
it's not.
but I feel like we seemed at an impasse with the 200 feet, and this would get us going with this issue, and it's less burdensome, and then we can continue to, evaluate this for a year or two and then go back if we feel like we need to go back at patios, we can do that.
Your solution isn't a bad solution if you're looking at it from, I'm the builder and I want to upgrade my facility in my house. The limit is the resident next door could be adversely affected, and we are purposely not looking at the project in that direction. And the issue comes up is how much does the neighbor get to influence what I'm doing if he's not paying any of the bill type of thing.
So I mean, if a professional engineer is already preparing the contours of the stormwater, why would they need to pay $500 to have another engineer review it? Right, I mean, the intent here is that they're already preparing these contours as part of the site plan. And so they're already doing it, so it's not an extra benefit. And then we're saying, but, you know, you better have another engineer review it. So it's already.
My understanding, and
drawing.
I will lean on Steve and Christy to add to this, but one distinction between the two, my understanding, is that when they apply for an ARB or do a project like that, we are looking at stormwater, but this ordinance alone also, the first thing that it says is that they run, you know, the drainage calculations as well. So there are certain things that we now require for new construction and building additions that we don't have in our code right now. And that was a problem with our code. Everybody wanted us to do more with stormwater, but we never really had even standards to work with. So there would, to me, be better plans, better accountability, and a review process, and something that's documented then too. Because that's the thing, after something's done, we might have two parties disagree on what the impact is. This way, the plan kind of, again, it's been sealed, it's been reviewed. But if you want to add to it, that's fine, but is that generally, you know, the main thing, so.
But I mean, the purpose of the ARB review is to review the drawings and make sure it fits in the, you know, I mean, it's a review. So why couldn't, if they're doing contours, why couldn't that just be part of the ARB review instead of an outside additional $500 engineering review?
Sure. I think it's kind of misrepresented right now that the ARB looks at drainage plans as part of their process. So what they're established to do really is to look more at the design, the building elevations, if it's taking a cue from the neighborhood, if it blends in kind of thing. So yeah, I don't feel like there is a thorough stormwater review that is done through the ARB right now.
I agree.
We don't have the
So,
expertise
it
on
would-
staff for that to be doing.
We don't have
Right.
the ARB either.
We don't have the standards in our code, and then we don't have, you know, the permit per se, and then we don't have the review process. And then part of this too was however this gets resolved, it goes deeper than that. I mean, this goes to like saying part of the planning is what is the methods that we're going to use. So what will come out of it is a review of BMPs, probably the use of that, and then this ordinance goes further to state then that after all this review is done and after everything's constructed, that has to then still be recorded too, and it has to be maintained. We don't have anything like that in our current code. So I think this takes a big swing, and I think it's very important. The other thing that we've brought up in the past was based on Alderman Leahy's and maybe some of your other concerns, you joined this concern, is let us also kind of go back and evaluate this whole idea from using zoning and this whole maximum lot coverage. Because if you remember in our past meetings, we said at some point there just ought to be like, you're done. You know, you've got to keep the rest be either pervious surface or open space. And so we don't have that in our current code either. I think that maybe partnered with this is a good place to start. As Alderman Parker-Tice said, we can kind of see how this goes. But again, at your wishes and however you want to proceed, at least get us started here. So.
Anybody else? Well, we got a motion and a second. Put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
No,
Opposed.
I think so.
Should we do roll call on that? That's all over the
Want to do a
place.
roll call?
Yeah.
Just to make sure, I have a motion to implement the stormwater infill development permit if a review is required by the ARB. Is that what you're doing? Okay. Chairman
For
Lockmiller?
clarification on the motion though, are we making a motion that that's what we take to the big board, or that staff incorporates that and then brings it back to us?
Oh, I was
To the big board.
to the big board.
It's what's being,
Yeah.
You're gonna draft the ordinance.
chapter 500.
Do a roll call.
Seems like he's
You want more
thinking.
needs?
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Continue to discuss it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I have more questions. I mean, it's, what happens after that $500 professional engineering review if they have issues? Do they have to pay that $500 again if they make updates and send it back in? Are they gonna have to pay that every time?
So after everything's been constructed and something just
No.
isn't
So when
working,
they're
or
coming in to get their new stormwater management permit and paying $500 to have an engineer review the contours from ARB, and if there are issues with it or it's not accepted, will they have to pay the $500 again after they update?
Well, that's gonna be part of the review, is to see if what has been designed is going to work. So if there's changes to that, then that would be part of the review of whoever the on-call engineer would be. That would still be in that initial fee, though, is one comment period, I guess, or review comments. So,
And to your comment about not having standards, what is the accept, reject criteria on these plans? Again, we're talking about contours that are being put together by a professional engineer and stamped and sealed, and then another engineer is going to be reviewing them on behalf of the city. What will the accept, reject criteria be on that?
so I'm gonna go ahead at this point, and I'm gonna let Chrissy talk, because she's been waiting all night anyway to talk.
Over the fence.
Just a little clarification, as it's written now, the review is not solely for contours, it would be to review the drainage calculations and then also to review the proposed BMPs or improvements that are included to control whatever runoff is generated from any new proposed improvements. So that would be the review, would be to not just look, I mean, you're definitely looking at contours, and you're right, those are created, but then it's the stormwater calculations and then also the recommendations to control whatever stormwater is required by the code.
I just want to point out that in old business, item 9C is a storm tech runoff issue that the city has been dealing with for years, and these are 2 infill houses. So I feel like this is so needed to help this problem. We are dealing with it. We have been dealing with it. We're going to continue to deal with it, and it's only a small swipe, but I feel like this is really needed, and it's $500. It's expensive. I mean, it's an expensive thing to add on, and it's an expensive, it's not a tax, but it's an expensive fee that our residents would have to pay. But I think, like, if they could pay $500 and be done with this, I think in the long run, I mean, these people on St. Clair have been dealing with this for years, and the long-term expense that they've had and the city has had is thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars. So,
No, we just had 2 new infills go in on Madge, and they both have water flowing across the sidewalks right now.
yeah, I mean,
And there's more coming.
and there's more coming.
But your ordinance that you have here looks at a 1.14 inch rainfall. I get a 2-inch rainfall, all of a sudden this thing goes, water spilling over again. You all made me do, and it didn't solve anything. And the guy you're gonna hear from is the guy that receives all the water from the other guy. I don't know that we've solved the problem as much as we've given more of a complaint to work with. I don't know how, because you got 50-foot wide lots in most of your areas, I don't know that you're going to come up with a way of absorbing that water if you put a house with a roof and a driveway in it, to the point that you don't end up shifting it all. My yard doesn't absorb all the water that hits on it, and I've got drains that go to rain gardens, but it still runs over my area, and I know it leaks into my neighbor to the south because she's 3 feet lower than I am, type thing. I just got it away from her house so that it goes into the backyards, because it seemed like the better thing to do. I don't know that we've solved the problem with this, and if you tell me that I gotta pay $500 and the guy comes back and complains later at me, I too will ask, what did my $500 buy me, other than a lot of extra grief?
Christie, you got anything you can add to that?
Well,
I don't know how you predict every event that's gonna happen.
You can't.
you can't, and that's kind of why we went with the 1.14. I mean, MSD's storm sewers are designed for a 15-year rainfall event, but given the lot size, you can't do that. But you're not absorbing all of that water. Part of the BMPs is to store it so that it runs off after the rain, so you're not exacerbating the problem during the rain event. So you're trying to delay that peak water that's coming off the properties is what you're trying to do. So you're not going to eliminate the water, and you're right, you're not going to eliminate it during all events. It's not practical. You can't.
Now, I like your motion that you have a way of sneaking under and getting away from permits, but my ARB isn't, it's a group of citizens that sit on it. I don't know.
I didn't ask,
They're not signing
yeah,
up.
that's not my
No.
motion. My motion is that if the project triggers ARB, then it has to do this
Yes.
project, not that ARB looks at this. They don't have the expertise.
To do
No.
it, yeah.
And then with the BMPs, I mean, if this were to pass tonight, don't we still have to work that out? So it really can't be part of this chapter 500 yet.
So,
have-
there was 2 other issues I was going to bring up. One would be that you're right, the 2 components of this is that we get our BMP manual together, which we've made a good start, but we haven't finished. So I was actually going to ask the Public Works Committee if I've been in contact with Horner and Schifrin to see if we could amend our existing contract just to allow us to just complete this together with some assistance from Horner and Schifrin. I don't have the cost of that yet, and then the whole board obviously would still have to approve that, but that was one other item. And then the other component still was to have this on-call engineer. I know, again, this past month I worked on putting the on-call engineering services RFQ together, and the more then, after I got it done, we sent it to other departments, the more collectively we looked at it and we said, the scope that I wrote up seems a little narrow. And so maybe what we need to do is have an on-call engineer that would work with just community stormwater issues. So again, if it is to start helping with design of something like what we're talking about with, over in St. Clair area, or when the OMCI monies come in and what kind of projects maybe we can design for a particular block, that we would have an engineer that could help with those kind of things. So just again, kind of something to design of systems. And so that's another thing that we're working on, and we'd have to get done. That, like I said, we'll have actually, I guess, back to this board then at the April meeting, and then forward that on to the board and package this all together. To answer your question, we need to package all this together.
Yeah, so tonight, what the motion really is, this is not going on to the board. This is just to amend where it says 200 square feet, we're really just any project that goes to ARB.
If you want to get the ordinance, I guess, out of your hands, I mean, I think we could write the ordinance so we have option A or option B. If again, you just want to go ahead and pass it on to the board, we'll have the same ordinance in context. It's just that we could have option A or option B. We would either leave it as basically how we put it together, or we would also have option B where, I mean, that's that's an idea. I don't know.
There's too many choices. Yeah, because I just don't want to send something half-baked onto the board. I don't know how the rest of you feel. I mean, if we need to get these BMPs ironed out in this chapter 500.
I think we can wait. The problems has existed for this long. I don't know how much longer it's gonna take, but I think what's critical is that there be a task order 2, for instance, so that we can engage Horner Schifrin to help complete the BMP manual, as Lisa said. So that definitely would need to go to the board on April 6th, and she has money in her budget to fund that. So in terms of action item, that would be a true action item. I think we've heard maybe a support somewhat for what is proposed here, so she can continue to work on it. I think if we really counted the vote, was it 2 for, 2 against?
2.
It was 2. So that means it's dead.
Yeah, that means it's dead, yeah.
Yeah. So we really need direction on that before she,
Yeah.
does more work in writing the ordinance for that.
I would not be in
Text
favor of
amendment.
forwarding onto the board at this time. I'd rather have this, just amend what we have here and give it back to Lisa.
Yeah.
And then come
Is-
back here in April.
Okay.
Is there enough, I mean, we're not voting, but if it's gonna die here, then why have Lisa work on it more?
Well,
Oh, we hadn't had that vote yet.
Yeah, we haven't had the
Yeah.
vote, and maybe
We
we're not,
haven't
maybe we
had
shouldn't
that
have the vote, but like, there's also like,
Maybe we shouldn't have the vote, there should just
I
be
guess,
discussion.
I want to know on the motion of taking it to the board. Right?
Oh.
So I think the addition of the ARB criteria is a significantly awesome step, right? So I think we still have some questions on this, and I just don't think it's ready to go to the board.
No, I don't
I
either.
still think.
Okay,
no one.
good.
Good. Well, then I will table my motion. To be really formal.
There you go.
Is that,
You're good.
because the motion was to take to the full board?
Well, it was, but
Oh, well.
Yeah, that was the end result of the vote. Unless you want to amend your motion and say not take it to the board yet,
I
but to
thought-
direct
yeah.
Lisa to.
I will amend my motion. I will untable my motion because it never got a second and I'm not really running the meeting, but I will amend, I will, do a motion to.
You did second
Oh,
it.
did you? Oh.
Yeah, so, but I think, Lisa, you're just looking for guidance right now on that, what type of project constitutes going to,
Hydraulic.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think this is a policy question. So
Right.
we do all the research. And again, I mean, I would like to see it go further than the ARB. But you kind of have to, you're the elected officials, you kind of have to kind of figure out, I hate to say tolerance, but what might be that tolerance level?
It's like
That's
how
where
you
the policy comes in,
How do you
so.
swell an elephant? One bite at a time. I think that's what we're trying to do here. So, I mean, I would entertain a motion, just what we just talked about, to direct Lisa on changing this from the 200 square feet to any project that would go to ARB, and then move forward with that.
Well, I will amend my motion to do that and have Lisa keep working on it and not yet take it to the board.
Second.
All right. Roll call, I guess.
Chairman Lockmiller,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
No.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
And Alderman Weggie.
Yeah.
3 yea, 1 nay, motion passes.
All right, do we need a task order then? Or
What's that?
for the BMPs going forward with
Yes, so
that?
that's the second motion from her presentation.
'Cause I just need to know, because it's not in here,
Yeah.
so
No.
is that what you need?
Yes.
All right.
Motion to direct staff to stand up a tax order 2 for the BMP.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Anybody
You
opposed?
weren't approving it, but just that we can draft it up, because it'll
Right.
still have to be approved by the
Right.
board.
Okay.
But
All right, anything else on this, Lisa?
I don't believe so.
All right.
Not tonight.
Let's- And that way Christie can go home.
It'll be a celebration someday.
Really, she don't have to listen to gumballs discussion. Let's move on to the Hanley Industrial Court branding. I guess that's you, Lisa?
Okay, so at the February meeting, we said that we had a meeting date scheduled to deliver the street plan and the rebranding plan for Hanley Industrial Court
If
to
I
the
can ask the
association.
committee to refresh your board docs.
Would,
Refresh it.
Lisa,
the cert-
your item was
No.
put in
Okay.
the tourist agreement.
The-
Tourist
Oh,
agreement.
Yes, I
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I'm running slow.
So we had that meeting in the end of February, February 28th. Arcturus was in attendance, and a few of the key staff that have worked on the project. Ted, also with the county, with the 911 system, was there. We had a crowd of just 3 people. But I was kind of wondering how this was going to go over. Even one of the members has a business there in Hanley Industrial Court and does the graphics and branding himself, to some degree. So I'm like, well, I wonder what he's going to think of the concept and everything. So first on the street plan. That went extremely well, and I think we're now have finally crossed that road, and I think that everybody agrees that it's not just about renaming one street in Hanley Industrial Court. So we actually had some street names suggested. We explained to them where 7 streets came from and how this would all tie in with East Central Dispatch and the 911 system. So that went over real well, and that one again is totally within the city to adopt ordinances and get the street names accomplished and so forth. So they were very supportive. And then the rebranding plan, we went through and gave that presentation. They really, really loved it. So, you've seen it now. It's called The Link. And I'm not here to give a presentation, especially, because with the time and that, I wasn't prepared to go through the whole presentation. But some people are going to look through it and think that just don't know where this came from, don't know if I like it kind of thing. Kind of the same reaction that some might have had with Brentwood Bound. I mean, coming up with this rebranding for Hanley is like so close to kind of the whole process we did. It's really identical what we did with Brentwood Bound. And when Brentwood Bound takes off in a couple of years, then we're going to have to kind of start refocusing there again and thinking about a rebranding for the redevelopment that's occurring. So what I would like to do with this, Hanley Industrial Court said that they actually wanted us to come back and they would get more people to the meeting. So I'm open to that, and I'd like for this board to obviously have really the full presentation and have Arcturus involved. The only thing I'm asking from you tonight is they did all their deliverables under their contract. So I would just ask if, again, maybe we could consider, and we did get an amount for them just to go ahead and have them participate in 2 more presentations, one with the Hanley Industrial Court folks again, and then secondly with you all. So that would be in a motion tonight if you would consider just adding the 2 meetings for the presentations to amend the agreement. So.
Any questions for Lisa before that? I know the comprehensive plan, that was one of the first things in that for this sub area. I think this is really cool. I mean, I think that area's got so much potential. And, I kind of thought, well, we'd go from industrial to business, but this even takes it kind of even another level than that. It doesn't really call it a business park. I mean, you've got your park area, you got your mass transit, you got your shopping. I mean, there's great potential there if somebody were to go out and I guess that'd be my next question is, once this is in place, do they have someone that will market this within the?
So I think it still comes back to the city to kind of figure out how to use it, just like we did with the Brentwood Bound. I can't speak for them, and I'm certainly not saying that they would or would not maybe partner with us on certain things. I think there's certainly, I think that's certainly a possibility, though. But like I said, they did like the whole concept, and I think what's so important is that we can take you through on how this evolved, because it is about telling a story. And again, some of you still after that may be lukewarm to the idea. I don't know. But what this did was actually pick up what we thought worked for Brentwood Bound. And the whole idea, when you think about it community-wide, is to have these districts or neighborhoods that again, you just hear it by name and you know where it's at, but that overall they tie back together, so everybody still kind of knows they're in Brentwood. I mean, they all kind of play off of each other, so. But I really would like you to just kind of have the whole presentation, and that's what I would recommend, so.
To your question, Alderman Lockmiller, we're already getting requests from brokers. Lisa's getting requests where they've asked us to be able to use some of the logos that we've developed for Brentwood Bound. So we're going to see things happen like that where they start using this material. And when developers or new businesses approach the city and meet with Lisa, she has a chance to pull out the comprehensive plan and talk about what we envision in terms of land use for that space. So I see it as a joint effort, a partnership between us, the owner of the property, brokers, real estate folks out there.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting, I think. All right,
One
well,
comment, I mean, so certainly I think another presentation, because when are we ready to roll this out to kind of the more public, right? I mean, residents don't know what we're talking about when we say the link yet. I mean, is there
No.
gonna be put it on the website, like introducing the link kind of thing, or?
Well, so if we could, I think the presentation should be made to you all, so I guess the earliest that could probably would be your April 20th meeting, if we need to get, I guess, approval
So we
on the
could
2
take a
meetings.
step back.
Okay.
So this is, the ultimate decision, or the final decision really is the board's. And Kevin O'Keefe has weighed in on that. So Lisa and her group have done all the work. So we can either take it to the public just as information sharing and then take it to the board, or we can take it to the board and then the public. It could be in
Yeah,
either
that's
way in terms of how we roll it out. It's just really what you all think is best.
But currently, you've reached the extent of your current contract.
Right.
And you're looking to do 2 more meetings, that they could come and make that presentation.
So we
So
would have
we
to
have to
add
fund that
another
portion.
meeting if we're
Yeah.
gonna take it public.
Yeah, so we have to fund those 2 meetings.
Yeah.
That's the motion on the arrangement is,
Right.
are we willing to amend their contract to incorporate 2 more meetings, one?
And Lisa
for-
has the cost
Yeah.
in, what is, I don't
About
remember what it is.
$1,000.
Uh,
How much out per meeting?
yeah, well, for
How
2
much?
meetings, it was under 2,000.
$950.
Yeah.
So if we add a third meeting to the public, there's you go, $950 times 4.
Well, I'm not sure it's a meeting, I mean,
No.
It's an
when are
open
we-
house.
When are we willing to start talking about this
Well,
with residents?
Now.
Yeah,
I mean, unless you all think that the board would not agree with all the work that's been done. I mean, I don't see why we couldn't, well, once we've finished all the meetings with the Hanley Industrial Group, right, then we should be able to take it to the public.
Yeah, or, I mean, we can go ahead and open it up to the public, because again, they had kind of their opportunity, and it went real well, but we could certainly take that to a different venue, so it would involve the association and the general public.
could, oh, I'm sorry. You have your hand
No,
raised.
you're good, go ahead.
With all this stuff going on in the wider world, I'm not sure that we should be planning and paying for a public meeting where we're drawing people together
So it's
to look.
really not a
to-
public meeting where we need a physical presence.
Yeah.
So we had a meeting with the design team for the Brentwood Bound project, and GRG is part of that team. And so they're sharing with us what they're doing, and they're taking a lot of their meetings virtual.
Okay.
So that's what we're gonna be doing going forward until this, situation we're in
Sure, okay.
resolves
I
itself.
just, yeah, thank you.
And
yeah.
one of the meetings is because you've got to go back to the association again because you only had 3 people show up.
Well, I think they,
They just didn't do a good job. of-
No, that was the leadership team.
yeah,
That was the
just
leadership team.
Team, okay.
like they're directors of their association.
If we agree, City of Brentwood, pick up the extra cost to expand the contract, is the association already on board with covering some of this cost?
Because this is a city-directed
Right,
project.
We never went down that avenue.
Right.
All right.
All right, so,
Motion to amend the current contract to allow for 2 more meetings up to a total of $2,900 expenditure.
I think she said 3, and then with the
Public.
public, it's 4.
4 meetings?
The virtual, so she said 2 more meetings with Hanley Industrial, 1 with the board.
Just one with Hanley yet.
Yeah.
Just one?
Yeah, so a total of 3.
Okay.
I would say just invite the public to one of those and
Yeah, I can agree with that.
We don't need to have 4 meetings
Okay,
about this thing.
so the board meeting,
Yeah.
All right, is there
but
a
that's a
second?
physical meeting with the board.
Okay.
And that would be the April 20th, that it would be
Uh-huh.
board.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thanks, Lisa.
Can we ask who did the second on this, Andy?
Brandon, you want to?
No, Brandy, was it Brandy? Okay.
I honestly didn't.
You did the
record a second.
first.
I made the motion, but I
Yeah.
didn't record a second. But we have a unanimous arrangement.
I'm
Put somebody
getting
down.
tired,
make
check the
something up.
tape. All right, Dan, we're moving on to storm chamber.
This one's interesting.
Yeah, this one's another one of those BMPs that we kind of talked about. So I know you've got in your packet, there's what actually got installed, which is this particular one. It's a 310 series. That's a Storm Tech chamber, so it's a SC310. So you've got the dimensions on there. It's roughly 85 inches by 34 and then 16 feet high, or 16 inches high rather. So it's fairly small, it's compact, it fits on that property easily. The problem is there's not enough volume. The person that lives there has a sump pump hooked up, sump pump runs several times an hour, it dumps its water into this thing. Then the north facade of the house, it's an infill house, so there's a pretty good sized square area. Water comes down the impervious surface of the roof, hits the gutter, turns, comes through this chamber. So the problem is he's at a higher elevation. Whenever the chamber fills up, it bleeds water through the sidewalk and over to the neighbor that's at the lower elevation. The good news is that the water doesn't reach the street. That was the problem before. Whenever the water went out in the street during cold weather, forms ice, somebody has to chip up the ice, oversalt it, and hopefully it doesn't create a roadway issue. So basically the problem was moved from the street to the property, and a lot of times it'll work, but during wet weather events like now, you know, the ground's saturated, so if it rains again, the sump pump's running, it's gonna fill up and leak its contents out. So we did meet with the vendors of this particular Storm Tech, this ADS, and they said, well, it's too small of a volume, you should have gone with a bigger chamber, it's a MC35. That one, the dimensions on it are a lot bigger. It's 86 inches by 77 inches and then 45 inches tall. And then you still have to have adequate cover over the top of that, so it gets pretty deep. You know, if you're already at almost 4 feet in overall height, you need a couple feet of cover, and then it has a rock base. I mean, you're digging a hole probably 7-8 feet deep. And if you look at the street view, it would basically fit between his concrete driveway and the retaining wall. It would fit in that whole green area. And it should work, but again, if you get a decent rain event, it may not. So what it was looking at in street view was, what if you took a pipe, you'd first have to see, do you have the right flow line elevation to the north? So up at White, there's an existing storm inlet, but if somehow you could gravity from this house all the way to that storm, everything would be gravity. You wouldn't have this big, looks like a septic tank cut in half. So you wouldn't have this big plastic dome underneath the surface. It would just go through a pipe and out to where they already have a storm. I like that idea because then if there's other infill houses, they could just tap onto it. You could pick up 5 houses on either side, so a total of 10. And if you put in, you would size the pipe for growth. So whether that's a 12-inch PVC, 15, 18, whatever the hydraulic calculation tells you, we would have to work with MSD, but then it kind of leads into the next item, the OMCI. Whenever we attended the meeting, I'd asked specifically, would a project like that qualify? And they said, yeah, if you're doing stormwater improvements, you're trying to get this water through a best management practice to something else, then yes. So the two are kind of related. Again, this was for informational purposes, so is the OMCI, but OMCI would have to take action if we're going to participate, since there's a few time-sensitive issues with
Yeah,
the
let's
next one.
dovetail into that. Why don't you talk about, bring everybody up to speed on the OMCI tax turn on?
Yeah, there's a presentation there, there's some handouts. Long and short of it is that MSD is running out of money for the projects that they're doing now. Eventually there's a finite time frame and they won't have any more money. So this OMCI, I believe it stands for Operations Management Capital Improvement is the acronym. So basically they would turn on this taxing sub-districts, so there's all these different sub-districts. It's based on the different watersheds. So we're in the Deer Creek watershed, and basically that would net us in total of around $125,000 for a year. And then if you do the cost share, then MSD will partner with us, and then we can use that money for all sorts of different things, whether it's a pipeline extension, if it's putting together some sort of like a regional plan or something that we want to do. Look at our overall city. We don't really have
A watershed.
Yeah, we don't have a watershed map or anything like some of the other cities do. So it would give you, you could do hydraulic modeling. I know Ladue did that, Frontenac. We don't have that. But we could also look at some of the streets that don't have storm sewers and see if, and it lets you accrue it too. So just because you don't spend the money in 1 year doesn't mean that you lose it. You can accrue it basically like a bank account. Eventually it turns itself off. I can't remember if it was 5 years or 3 years. After so many years, it's like then it'll turn itself off again unless they have to get their board to approve it in June of 20. And then if we wanted to participate, the way Paula's got these listed here, you have to choose one of these. You would need to respond before October 1st of 2020.
So I guess where we're at is, if we're looking at this OMCI tax. Well, we have to fill out some paperwork by
Yes.
August, by October.
Yes.
Yes.
More than likely, MSD is going to, trustees are going to let them turn this back on.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2021, we got $125,000 to play around with.
Right.
You got to submit projects, and the Sinclair could be a project.
Right. Yeah, we could try to wean ourselves off some of these storm techs, or maybe there's areas that we have, icing issues that don't have storm techs that need some sort of BMP to get rid of this. I know we had issues, I can't remember if it was Lewis or whatever the street was, that there was runoff because it's such a steep pitch. If there's no curb either, it runs off, and there's no storm sewers.
Lewis Avenue, there is no storm
Yeah.
collection whatsoever through the backyard.
Yeah, the closest sewer was like across Manchester
Manchester.
Road, and it was
And
super
east.
cost prohibitive to
Yep.
do.
There could also be a more coordinated way to do this. We do not have a stormwater master plan.
Mhm.
And just the preliminary costs that we've received from Frontenac and Ladue, it's quite expensive.
Right.
And they do it in phases. So maybe our initial phase could be a survey of the entire community so that they document everywhere where we have this issue. We've tried over the last year or two during the winter season when it freezes up to just drive around and note, and then sometimes we get complaints from residents in the elected body. So I don't know that we have a comprehensive list of where those issues are. So that could also be something that could be funded through this OMCI.
So I guess we just need a motion to direct staff to first complete this letter of intent. And then we would then after October submit projects.
Well,
In order to
so
ensure the 2021 funds.
they said we don't even really need to know what those specific projects are right now,
Right.
right? We just need to know that they need to know what we're gonna use it for, which is stormwater issues. And that gives us time for this committee and or the board to decide, do we
Right.
wanna issue an RFQ for an engineer to come help us with the stormwater master plan? And then, some of the problems that we have, we can start to tackle those as well. There are a number of ways to handle this.
Right.
Have they approved turning on OMCI taxes again, or are they still waiting?
I think
Waiting
they
for
have
board approval, I believe that's June of 20.
Yeah, they have a meeting, board
Yeah.
meeting to do that.
Yeah, the MSD board will.
Yeah.
Listen,
more
I'll
than
just tell you
likely.
this, they're so confident they're gonna turn it back on, they've already got the forms prepared that we can submit.
Right, right.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
violating their promise to the residents, to the voters.
Yeah.
That's all
I know.
their issue.
June
They-
2020,
they
the
get to do it.
board adopts, I think there's a schedule here, the board adopts it, and then July through December of 2020, municipalities, county declare intent to participate. St. Louis County collects the real estate taxes, and then January through July of, this is 2021. Well, no, because they're working on their budget right now. So they will be appropriating funds for grant programs, and then municipalities will submit application for specific activities. I don't know that they told us when, is it next year, when we should expect to
Right.
receive the first,
Yeah.
proceeds from this? Yeah.
And it could be for erosion control and other storm-related, stormwater-related projects too. So, creek stabilization.
I want to take a when we engineered and put the first BMP in, it was designed for the volume that we all anticipated. Did something change in the hookups that has made this thing drastically undersized?
That I don't know, and the other thing is,
Was the sump pump originally designed to go into this?
I would assume when the house was built, it had a sump pump because it's got a big submerged basement, so I'm assuming that there's always been a sump. I don't know if the downspout and gutters were always attached. They probably were, but it could be that it's filling up too, because it is a chamber, it sits on top of rock, and if you've got that constant back and forth with water filling in, because it is a storage, it's detention, so it's holding that, but if the fines keep going up to the surface and then coming back down, eventually, plus I'm thinking that because it does have open gutters, there's leaves and stuff that probably get in there and shoot straight down and fill up, and if it's organic, it'll decay, but at a
I
certain
got
rate.
sludge and stuff, okay.
Yeah, there's no clean out either, because I'm like, I don't know why we didn't get
Who's responsible
the,
for replacing it?
well, we put it in 2015. I don't know if there's an agreement that says maintenance and all
I would
that.
love to know if I would eventually, I would hope that after we put it in, that the homeowner takes the responsibility.
That would be the plan. We brought this to
Yeah.
to this committee
Yeah.
before we put it in back in 2015 or so.
So
Okay.
the homeowners are responsible at this point if this thing is too small, we need to
No,
upgrade
that,
it?
we never.
We never pushed it at that
Right,
time.
that's correct.
Now, the other thing is, we've got 3 projects going on with MSD right now where they're disconnecting people that have sump pumps and downspouts that are running into their lines.
Mhm.
But you're saying I could put in a little bit
Well, they're
bigger one
connected
and then
typically
pipe
to
a pipe
sanitary.
over
This
to
is
the other.
storm.
It's a different
It's a
sanitary.
sanitary.
Yeah.
All right, so we are keeping them separate, so.
Yeah, you have to. You can't
Yes.
combine the two.
Okay.
There's actually a project coming up that's, I'll send it in the weekly report, but HDR is designing it, and it's Bridgeport, Rosalie, Eulalie. Those are getting separations and
Yep.
disconnections. And then there's a piece of pipe that runs between the alley, between the post office and our empty lot through City Hall parking lot. So that'll take place in 2021.
Well, that's another issue.
So-
But I
Thank
think,
you.
but what I think, in order to keep from, go ahead and replacing this one on Sinclair with a bigger one.
Right, and it may not
If
work.
we could
you know.
submit a project next year, if we
To
can
pipe
wait
it.
another
Right.
year,
And pipe it.
I would think that would be more advantageous.
Yeah.
Right.
Should be a lot,
And it gives you-
easier to
yeah.
do than to dig this thing
Yeah.
deeper.
And it gives you the flexibility if there's other infill houses in that short little area, between those 10 homes, they could connect to it as well. And then you don't worry about pop-up drains or filter drains or
Okay.
anything else. You could just take it directly to the storm.
All right, so once again, we need to decide on selecting.
The letter of intent, right?
Yeah, letter of intent is the first action for this committee.
So,
One comment, I'm voting no in protest because that was the, I think this irritates me beyond belief.
So, this is great, and I know this has been an ongoing concern for quite some time with this runoff here. But I will sort of add publicly that at our ward meeting on Tuesday, the resident who lives at 8821 Bridgeport came, and they are just down from the 8812 storm tech chamber, and he was talking about all the water that runs off from the other side of the street and down into his driveway, and I had no idea that there was a storm tech chamber there until I read this, and I'm like, okay, so there's more than one storm
Oh,
tech
yeah,
chamber that
we
isn't
have-
quite
oh, yeah.
working like it was designed to do.
Dan, do you remember how many we put in? It was,
The best I found was like 6 or 8 of them.
Yeah.
There's some at high
I thought we
school.
did 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just I'm adding that
Yeah.
There might be
discussion in
others,
the public
yeah.
record that there are
somebody
issues
please
there.
make the motion of the letter of intent. Would you like to make that?
Yes, I will make a motion that the city of Brentwood please cooperate with MSD to do the letter of intent for the OMCI reimbursement program for the year 2020-2021.
I'll second it, because I know you won't.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Who opposes?
Me.
Blood money.
Split.
All right, I think we're done with that.
Wood singer.
Let's move on to Litzinger Sidewalk. What do you got, Dan?
Litzinger, most of you are aware that there's a pathway that goes from the east side of Cecilia and goes east and west. This area that I'd like to consider a sidewalk, or at least figure out what property rights we have to add a sidewalk, would be the stretch of Litzinger from Cecilia going west across Helen. So right now, there's only 20 feet of right-of-way that I can find according to the maps. And if you look at that section view, it's pretty much paved within a foot or so of the right-of-way line. So, trying to figure out like a best fit there. I know that talking to the fire department, they don't want to reduce down the pavement width because it is fairly narrow. It's only, I think, 18 feet of paved 16? Yeah, I know it's somewhere in the teens. It's one of the narrow sections.
Right on the edge.
Yeah, and of course there's, one on that north side. Whenever I looked at ADA, you could go, because it's a short run, it's less than 200 feet, you could go down to a 4-foot width on the sidewalk instead of a 5. And then with that utility pole, you have to maintain at least 3 feet of clearance from the face of the pole to the edge of the sidewalk. So if you put in a 4-foot walk, it could be cast around that pole, so to speak, but still give you the 3 feet. It seems like the north side would be the most logical to come from the path, stay on the north side, and then you'd put a crosswalk in going across Helen, and then there is sidewalk on the north side of Litzinger, west of Helen, that's on the north side of Litzinger, because Helen's a weird street. It's disjointed. It doesn't make a nice 4-way.
Motion to amend the TWN work order.
Yeah, we've got budget for it. I just
Second.
wanted to.
You got a second?
I have a
Second.
lady that is very unhappy.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, passes. Move on to citizen comment, unless you had anything else, Dan, on that?
Nope.
Okay. All right, it's almost 8 o'clock. No citizens left here, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nancy seconded.
Thank you.